The zipper closing up my back sounded like a gunshot in the silence of my room. I had 60 seconds. 60 seconds before I had to walk down those stairs and face my entire family. 60 seconds before I honored a promise that had waited 4 long years. 60 seconds before I stepped into a version of myself no one had ever met. What would you do if keeping a dying wish meant finally living as your true self? What would you do if becoming yourself meant risking everything familiar? Today, I stop asking. Today, I find out. But to understand why this moment matters, why these 60 seconds carry the weight of 4 years, I need to take you back. Back to the morning it all began. Back to the moment everything changed. The sunlight streaming through my curtains felt different that morning. It was my 18th birthday, and I could hear the sounds of celebration being prepared downstairs. Balloons being inflated, the scrape of furniture being moved, the clatter of plates and glasses being set out on tables. My mother's cheerful voice drifted up through the floorboards, warm and expectant. "Birthday boy, come down when you're ready. Birthday boy." Those 2 words hit me like stones in my chest. I lay there in bed, staring at the ceiling, feeling the suffocating weight of what was about to happen. They were down there preparing for someone who wouldn't exist by the time I descended those stairs. They were celebrating me, but never met the person I had become. And the cruel irony of it all? They had no idea. For 4 years I had carried this secret like a stone in my pocket. 4 years of waiting. 4 years of hiding. 4 years of promises whispered in the dark to someone who could no longer hear them. But today, the promise became real. Today, the countdown ended. I pulled myself out of bed and walked to my closet. In the very back, hidden behind winter coats and old boxes, was a section no one in my family knew existed. A collection of garments carefully chosen over years. Pieces of a puzzle I'd been assembling in secret, one fragment at a time. The dress hung there, waiting. Blush pink and charcoal gray, structured and elegant, with ruffles that promised movement and drama. Next to it, the shoes. The jewelry, the makeup carefully collected and practiced within stolen moments. Everything was ready. Everything except me. My hands trembled as I reached out to touch the fabric. The dress felt like possibility and terror all at once. It felt like freedom and exile. It felt like the most honest thing I'd ever done, and the most dangerous risk I'd ever taken. 4 years had led to this moment. 4 years since I made the promise. 4 years since I lost the only person who truly understood. I was 14 years old when my sister died. Stephanie was everything to me. 6 years older, infinitely wiser, endlessly patient. She was the only person in the world who knew the truth about who I really was. The only person I could talk to about the dreams I had. The person who held my hand through every moment of confusion and fear. I remember sneaking into her room while her parents were downstairs watching television. I remember opening her closet and running my fingers along the fabrics of her dresses. I remember the way the silk felt against my skin, the way the colors seemed to glow in the dim light of her bedroom. And I remember the moment she caught me. Most siblings would have laughed, would have teased, would have run downstairs to tell our parents what their weird little brother was doing. But Stephanie just smiled. She closed the door behind her, sat down on the floor beside me, and said, "Do you want to try one on?" From that moment on, she became my guardian, my protector, my safe harbor, in a world that felt increasingly hostile to the truth of who I was. She taught me how to apply makeup in subtle ways that our parents wouldn't notice. She bought me clothes in her size, claiming they were for herself, then secretly giving them to me. She created a space where I could be myself, even if that space was only the 4 walls of her bedroom late at night when everyone else was asleep. "You're going to be so beautiful," she would tell me, brushing my hair while I sat at her vanity. "One day, you're going to step out into the world as yourself, and everyone is going to see what I see." "What if they hate me?" I would ask, my voice small and afraid. "Then they're the ones who are wrong," she would say simply. "Not you, never you." During that moment, she was my everything. And then she got sick. It started with headaches, then fatigue, then doctors, appointments that became more frequent, more urgent, more frightening. The word tumor entered our family vocabulary like a curse. Treatments began. Hope fluctuated. And through it all, Stephanie remained the strongest person I knew. Even as her body weakened, her spirit never wavered. I was 14 when I sat by her hospital bed for the last time. The room smelled of antiseptic and flowers, a strange combination of clinical sterility and desperate hope. She was pale, so pale, her skin almost translucent in the harsh fluorescent lighting. But when she looked at me, her eyes were still bright, still fierce, still full of love. She reached out and gripped my hand with surprising strength. "Promise me something," she whispered, her voice rasping with effort. "Anything," I said. "Anything, Stephanie. Promise me you'll be brave." Her fingers tightened around mine. "Promise me that when you're ready, when you're truly ready, you won't hide anymore. Promise me you'll live as yourself, authentically, fearlessly, the way I've always known you could." She spoke, her breathing becoming more labored. "Step out into the world as the person you really are. No more hiding, no more pretending. Can you do that for me?" "Yes," I said. "Yes, I promise." She smiled then, that beautiful smile that had always made everything feel possible. 3 days later, she was gone. The years between 14 and 18 were the longest of my life. After Stephanie died, our house became a mausoleum of grief. My parents withdrew into themselves, each processing the loss in their own way. Family gatherings became strained and uncomfortable. Laughter felt like betrayal. Joy felt impossible, and I was left alone with my secret, without my protector, without my guide. There were nights when I would sneak into Stephanie's room, which my parents had left exactly as it was. I would sit at her vanity and stare at my reflection, trying to see what she had seen, trying to find the courage she had believed I possessed. I would open her jewelry box and carefully lift out the gold chain necklace she had worn every day, the one she had been wearing in the hospital, the one the nurses had removed and given to my mother, who had then placed it in this box like a sacred relic. In the back of my closet, hidden behind boxes and winter coats, my secret wardrobe began to grow. One piece at a time, carefully purchased with birthday money and allowance savings. A dress here, a pair of shoes there. Makeup bought from drugstores in towns where no one knew me. I practiced in secret. Late at night when my parents were asleep, I would lock my bedroom door and transform. I learned to apply foundation smoothly, to blend eyeshadow, to line my lips. I learned to walk in heels without stumbling, to move with grace instead of awkwardness. Each time I would stand before my mirror and try to see what Stephanie had seen. Each time I would touch the necklace I'd taken from her room and hidden among my treasures. Each time I would whisper, "I'm getting there, Stephanie, I'm getting there." But the fear never went away. What if my parents rejected me? What if our extended family disowned me? What if the world I stepped out into was hostile and cruel? What if I lost everything for the sake of being honest? There were nights when I convinced myself I couldn't do it. Nights when I decided the promise was impossible, that Stephanie had asked too much, that some secrets were meant to stay hidden forever. But then I would remember her face in that hospital bed, the fierce determination in her eyes, the absolute certainty in her voice when she said, "I'll be so proud of you," and I knew I couldn't break my promise, not to her, not after everything she had done for me. So I waited, and practiced, and prepared, and slowly, painfully, the person I was meant to be began to take shape. When I woke up on the morning of my 18th birthday, I knew immediately that this was the day. 4 years of waiting had led to this moment. 4 years of preparation, of secret practice, of promises whispered in the dark. Today, there would be no more excuses, no more delays, no more hiding. Today, I would honor Stephanie's dying wish. Today, I would become myself. I could hear my family moving around downstairs, preparing for the party. My mother's voice, bright and cheerful, calling out instructions. My father's deeper tones responding. The laughter of relatives who had already arrived. The sound of my younger cousin running through the house, excited about the celebration. They were preparing for someone who didn't exist. And in 2 hours, they would discover the truth. I looked at the clock. 9 a.m. The party was scheduled to start at 11 o'clock. That gave me 2 hours to complete the transformation, 2 hours to become the person I had been rehearsing for 4 years, 2 hours to honor a promise that had waited long enough. I stood up and walked to my closet, pushed aside the winter coats, moved the boxes, and there it was, my secret collection, carefully curated over years of patient preparation. I pulled out the dress first. The off-the-shoulder midi dress with its geometric color block design in blush pink, white, and charcoal gray. The structured fitted bodice. The defined waist. The asymmetrical ruffled hem that would create movement and elegance with every step. This dress was more than fabric and thread. It was a statement. It was armor. It was art. It was authenticity. Next, the shoes. Nude brown ankle-strap high-heeled sandals with open toes and slim heels. I had practiced walking in these for months, pacing back and forth across my bedroom floor in the dead of night, learning to move with confidence instead of uncertainty. The accessories came next. The gold chain necklace. Stephanie's necklace, the one I had taken from her jewelry box and kept hidden all these years. The stacked gold bracelets. The small rectangular beige clutch that would hold nothing but my courage. And finally, the makeup. Every product carefully chosen, every technique practiced, until it became second nature. Everything was ready. All that remained was for me to find the courage to actually do it. I locked my bedroom door, a small act of protection, of creating a sacred space for this transformation. Then I stood before my mirror and pressed my hand against Stephanie's necklace, which I had already placed around my neck. "For you, Stephanie," I whispered. "For us. For the promise I made." And then I began. I started with my skin, the canvas upon which everything else would be built. The primer went on first, smoothing over pores and creating a flawless base. I worked it into my skin with careful, deliberate motions, watching in the mirror as my face began to change. Next came the foundation, concealer, then the powder, setting everything in place. I dusted it lightly across my face with a large, fluffy brush, the way Stephanie had taught me all those years ago. Contouring was where the real transformation began. I had studied this technique obsessively, watching countless tutorials, practicing until I could create shadows and highlights that reshaped my face entirely. The contour powder went beneath my cheekbones, along my jawline, down the sides of my nose. I blended each stroke carefully, creating the illusion of delicate bone structure, of feminine angles. The eyebrows were crucial. Then came the eyeshadow. I started with a transition shade in the crease, blending it outward and upward. Eyeliner was the hardest part. I have practiced this thousands of times, but my hand still trembled as I brought the brush close to my eye. A thin line along the upper lash line, extending slightly beyond the outer corner to create a subtle wing. I held my breath as I drew it, knowing that one wrong move could ruin everything. I lined my lips carefully with a nude lip liner, creating a defined shape that was slightly fuller than my natural lip line. When I stepped back from the mirror, I barely recognized myself. The face looking back at me was feminine, polished, beautiful. It was me, the real me, the me Stephanie had always seen. The hair came next, and the ritual of becoming. The dress hung on the back of my closet door, waiting. I approached it slowly, reverently, as though it were a sacred garment. In many ways, it was. I carefully lifted it from the hanger and stepped into it, pulling it up over my body. The fabric felt cool against my skin, smooth and structured. I slipped my arms through the off-the-shoulder sleeves, feeling them settle perfectly into place. I reached behind myself, grasped the pull, and slowly, deliberately, drew it upward. The sound it made seemed impossibly loud in the silence of my room. Each tooth clicking into place felt like a small victory, a small step toward authenticity. The dress tightened around my body, embracing every curve, celebrating the shape I had worked so hard to achieve. When the zipper reached the top, I fastened the small hook and eye closure at the back of my neck. The dress was complete. I turned to face the mirror. The dress fit perfectly. This wasn't just a dress. This was transformation made tangible. This was authenticity given form. This was courage made visible. The final details, accessories, came next. I picked up the small rectangular beige clutch and held it at my side. Then I turned to face the full-length mirror one final time. The person standing before me in the mirror was a stranger, and yet she was also the most familiar person I had ever seen. Every detail was perfect. The makeup, flawless and feminine. The hair, styled in elegant waves. The dress, structured and sophisticated. The accessories, carefully chosen and perfectly placed. But it was more than the sum of these parts. It was the way I stood, the way I held myself, the confidence in my posture, the certainty in my expression. For the first time in my entire life, I looked at my reflection and felt complete. This was who I was meant to be. This was who Stephanie had always seen. This was who I had kept private for 18 years. I glanced at the clock on my nightstand. 10:59 a.m., 60 seconds. That's all I had left. 60 seconds before the party officially started. 60 seconds before I would be expected downstairs. 60 seconds before I crossed the threshold from this room, this sacred space where I had transformed, into the real world where my family waited. 60 seconds before I honored Stephanie's dying wish. 60 seconds before I discovered whether authenticity would cost me everything. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My hands were shaking, despite my best efforts to steady them. My breath came in short, sharp gasps that I tried to control. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to stop, to take off the dress, to wash off the makeup, to go downstairs as the person they expected, the person they had prepared a party for, the person who didn't really exist but who was safe and familiar and acceptable. But I couldn't. I had made a promise. And Stephanie was watching. I touched her necklace one more time, drew in a deep breath, and turned toward my bedroom door. It was time. I unlocked my bedroom door and stepped out into the hallway. The sounds of the party drifted up from downstairs. Laughter, conversation, the clink of glasses, music playing softly in the background. The warm, happy chaos of a family celebration. A celebration for someone who was about to disappear. I walked slowly toward the staircase. Each step deliberates and measured. The heels clicked softly against the hardwood floor. The ruffles of my dress swayed with each movement. My hand gripped the clutch at my side like a lifeline. And then I reached the top of the stairs. I could see them below me. My mother arranging food on the dining room table. My father laughing with my uncle near the kitchen. My cousins chasing each other around the living room. Relatives scattered throughout the first floor, all of them smiling, all of them happy, all of them completely unaware that everything was about to change. I took the first step down. The click of my heel cut through the laughter like a knife. One head turned, then another, and another. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Laughter died in throats. Hands froze mid-gesture. Every eye in the house turned toward the staircase. Toward me. I kept walking. 1 step. 2 steps. 3. The dress moved with me, the ruffles swaying, the fabric catching the light from the chandelier above. My hand stayed steady on the railing, my chin stayed up. My eyes stayed forward, even as I felt their stares boring into me. Even as I saw my mother's face go pale. Even as I watched my father's expression shift from confusion to shock, to something I couldn't quite name. I reached the bottom of the stairs and stood there, in full view of everyone, in full light, completely exposed and utterly vulnerable. The silence was crushing. No one spoke. No one moved. They just stared, their eyes wide, their mouths open, their minds clearly struggling to process what they were seeing. I found my voice, soft but steady. "Hi, I know this isn't what you were expecting today." Still, no one responded. I took a breath, my fingers instinctively rising to touch Stephanie's necklace. "This is me. This is who I've always been." But I couldn't hide anymore. My voice grew stronger, more certain. I couldn't break my promise to her. At the mention of Stephanie's name, I saw visible emotion ripple through the room. My mother's eyes filled with tears. My father's jaw clenched. Several relatives looked down at the floor. But still, no one spoke. The silence stretched on, becoming unbearable. It pressed against me from all sides, suffocating and heavy and endless. I couldn't stand it anymore. "I need some air," I said quietly. I didn't wait for permission. Didn't wait for their response. Didn't wait to see if they would accept me or reject me. I simply walked. Across the foyer, toward the front door. The heels clicked against the floor with each step. The dress flowed behind me. The ruffles danced with movement. Family members stepped aside as I passed, creating a path, still staring, still silent. I reached the front door and placed my hand on the handle. I looked back over my shoulder, making eye contact with my mother. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face, but her expression was unreadable. Shock? Confusion? Anger? Acceptance? I couldn't tell. I gave her a small, soft smile. I'll be back. I need a moment. Then I turned the handle and opened the door. Sunlight flooded in, brilliant and warm and overwhelming. I stepped across the threshold. I stood on the front porch, the door closing softly behind me. The world outside was quiet. A typical suburban street on a Saturday morning, neighbors, houses lining the road, trees swaying gently in the breeze, a clear blue sky stretching endlessly overhead, and there I stood, visible to anyone who might look, vulnerable, exposed, authentic. My hand rose to touch Stephanie's necklace at my throat. "I kept my promise, Stephanie," I whispered. "I'm here, I'm me." A breeze caught the ruffles of my dress, making them dance. The sunlight warmed my skin. The world seemed to hold its breath around me. "I'm free," I said, my voice breaking with emotion. "I'm finally real." For 18 years I had hidden. For 4 years I had waited. For countless hours I had practiced and prepared and promised. And now I was here, standing in the full light of day as my authentic self. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if my family would accept me or reject me. I didn't know if I had just gained my true life or lost my entire world. But in that moment, standing on my front porch in a beautiful dress with Stephanie's necklace around my neck, I knew one thing with absolute certainty. I had kept my promise. I had been brave. And Stephanie was watching, proud of me at last. The zipper had closed, the door had opened, and I had stepped out, not as who they wanted me to be, but as who I was always meant to become. What happens next? I have no idea, but I'm ready to face it. Finally, truly, completely ready. What do you think happened next? Did my family come outside? Did they accept me? Did the neighbors see? Did the world respond with love or with judgment? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to know what happened after I stepped off that porch, what my father did when the shock wore off, how my family responded when the silence finally broke, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Because this story, it's far from over. Thank you for witnessing my truth. Thank you for letting me share Stephanie's promise. Until next time, the end. The Gender Diary exists to light that path with shared stories. Whether you found connection in this narrative, you're on your own journey of gender exploration, or you're here seeking understanding, your subscription fuels our mission. Every subscriber empowers us to keep illuminating these authentic experiences for our community. Kindly drop a comment below. Your voice adds to the tapestry of experiences that makes this space meaningful. Until our next story unfolds.